Chapter 3. Pooh and Piglet go hunting and nearly catch a woozle. The piglet lived in a very grand house in the middle of a beech tree, and the beech tree was in the middle of the forest, and the piglet lived in the middle of the house. Next to his house was a piece of broken board which had Trespassers W on it. When Christopher Robin asked Piglet what it meant, he said it was his grandfather's name and had been in the family for a long time. Christopher said, "You couldn't be called Trespassers W." And Piglet said, "Yes, you could, because his grandfather was, and it was short for Trespassers Will, which was short for Trespassers William, and his grandfather had two names in case he lost one. Trespassers made after Uncle, and William made after Trespassers. I've got two names," said Christopher Robin carelessly. "Well, there you are. It proves it," said Piglet. One fine winter's day, when Piglet was brushing away the snow in front of his house, he happened to look up, and there was Winnie the Pooh. Winnie the Pooh was walking around and looking around in a circle and thinking of something else when Piglet called to him just as he went on walking. "Hello," said Piglet. "What are you doing?" "Hunting," said Pooh. "Hunting what?" "Tracking something," said Winnie the Pooh very mysteriously. "Tracking what?" said Piglet, coming closer. "That's just what I ask myself. I ask myself, what? What do you think you'll answer?" said Piglet. "I shall have to wait and catch up with it," said Winnie the Pooh. "Now, look there." He pointed to the ground in front of him. "What do you see there?" "Tracks," said Piglet. "And paw marks." He gave a little squeak of excitement. "Oh, Pooh, do you think it's a woozle?" "It may be a woozle," said Pooh. "Sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. You can never tell with paw marks." With those very few words, he went on tracking, and Piglet, after watching him for a minute or two, ran after him. Winnie the Pooh had come to a sudden stop and was bending over the tracks in a puzzled sort of way. "What's the matter?" asked Piglet. "It's a very funny thing," said Bear. "There seem to be two animals now. This, whatever it was, has been joined by another, whatever it is, and the two of them are now proceeding in company. Would you mind coming with me, Piglet, in case they turn out to be hostile animals?" Piglet scratched his ear in a nice sort of way that said he had nothing to do until Friday, and he would be delighted to come in case it really was a woozle. "You mean in case it really is two woozles," said Winnie the Pooh, and Piglet said that anyhow he had nothing to do till Friday, so off they went together. There was a small, spiny lurch of trees, and it seemed as if the two woozles, if that's what they were, had been going round this spiny, so round the spiny went Pooh and Piglet after them, Piglet passing the time by telling Pooh that his grandfather Trespassers W had done to remove stiffness after tracking, and how his grandfather Trespassers W had suffered in later years from shortness of breath, and other matters of interest. And Pooh wondering what grandfather was like, and if perhaps this was two grandfathers they were after now, and if so, whether they would be allowed to take one home and keep it, and what Christopher Robin would say about that. And still the tracks went on in front of them. Suddenly, Winnie the Pooh stopped pointing excitedly in front of him. "Look!" "What?" said Piglet, and jumped up, and then, to show that he hadn't been frightened, he jumped up and down once or twice in an exercising sort of way. "The tracks," said Pooh. "A third animal has joined the other two." "Pooh, Pooh!" cried Piglet. "Do you think it's another woozle?" "No," said Pooh. "It makes different marks. It is either two woozles and one, what might be a whizzle or two, as it might be whizzles and one. So if so, it is woozle. Let's continue to follow them." So they went on, feeling just a little anxious now in case the three animals in front of them were of hostile intent. And Piglet wished very much that Grandfather T.W. were there instead of elsewhere, and Pooh thought how very nice it would be if they met Christopher Robin, suddenly but quite accidentally, and only because he liked Christopher Robin so much. And then, all of a sudden, Winnie the Pooh stopped again and licked the tip of his nose in a cooling manner, for he was feeling more hot and anxious than ever in his life before. There were 4 animals in front of them. Do you see, Piglet? Look at their tracks. 3, as it were, woozles, and 1, as it was, Whizzle. Another woozle has joined them. And so it seemed to be. There were tracks crossing over each other, getting muddled up with each other. But quite plainly, every now and then, the tracks of 4 sets of paws. I think, said Piglet, as he licked the tip of his nose too and found it brought very little comfort. I think I've just remembered something. I just remembered something that I forgot to do yesterday and I shan't be able to do tomorrow. So I suppose I really ought to go back and do it now. Well, we'll do it this afternoon and I'll come with you, said Pooh. Isn't the sort of thing you can do in an afternoon, said Piglet quickly. It's a very particular morning thing that has to be done in the morning, and if possible between the hours of, what time would you say it was? About 12, said Winnie the Pooh, looking at the sun. Between, as I was saying, the hours of 12 and 12:05. So really, dear Pooh, if you'll excuse me. What's that? Pooh looked up at the sky, and then, as he heard the whistle again, he looked up to the branches of a big oak tree and saw a friend of his. It was Christopher Robin. He said, then you'll be all right, said Piglet. You'll be quite safe with him. Goodbye, and trotted off home as quickly as he could. Very glad to be out of all danger again, Christopher Robin came slowly down his tree. Silly old bear, he said, what were you doing? First, you went around the spiny twice by yourself, and then Piglet ran after you and went around again together, and then you were just going around a 4th time. Wait a moment, said Winnie the Pooh, holding up his paw. He sat down and thought, the most thoughtful way he could think. And then he fitted his paw onto one of the tracks, and he stretched his nose twice and stood up and scratched his nose. Yes, said Winnie the Pooh. I see now, said Winnie the Pooh. I have been foolish and deluded, said he. I am a bear of no brain at all. You're the best bear in the world, said Christopher Robin soothingly. Am I? Said Pooh hopefully. Then he brightened up suddenly. Anyhow, he said, it's nearly lunchtime, so he went home for it. And that's the end of chapter 3.